If we could all stand, please. Kia ora tātou, welcome everyone. Just before we start the 10-year plan hearings this morning, Mona Wharawhara will take the blessing for us, and Reverend Phil Wilson will do a reading after that. So thank you both. Mona.
Pēnei ana te kōrero ki a tātou i roto i ngā rangi tāhure ake nei, anō te pai te āwhare tō te noho tahi o ngā taina o ngā tuakana i runga i te whakaroka. Oi anō i rungi te rā whakaroka i noi tātou. E pai tu matua nei rā mātou i whakamoemetia whakawhetai atu nei ki a koe i tēnei rangi. Ana koe ia te timatanga o ngā kōrero ka puta mai mō te mahere te kautau, ana kua tau nei ki te aroaro o te kaunihira. Nō reire e pai te matua a whinatia mai ngā memo o te kaunihira, ki te pī karikari, ngā tāringa, ki te āta whakarongo ki ngā kōrero ka puta mai i te nohonga tangata o kirikiriro. Nō reire, pai te matua tō mātou koromatua, ānuru, me ngā member pōti, huri no i te whare nei, ngā kaimahi o te whare, tātou katoa e ūnei ki tēnei mahi, ko te tūmanako, ko te inoi, kia mutu, i te pai, i te tika, i te pono, ngā kōrero katoa. Hoi anō i te atua, kia korua i tia tō aroha ki rungi i tēnei whare, i tēnei rā mea tērā wiki i roto i te aroha o tautama i Ukaraiti. Āmene.
Kia ora tātou. Today's reading, the reading set down for today is from the Acts of the Apostles, Chapter 18. The Acts of the Apostles is a book which is really a continuation of the Gospel according to St. Luke, but then switches its focus to the fledgling Christian church, which followed Jesus' death and resurrection. This reading comes from a section of the book where Paul is staying in Corinth at the house of a friend next door to the local synagogue. And we pick up the reading from there where it says, "One night the Lord said to Paul in a vision, 'Do not be afraid, but speak and do not be silent, for I am with you, and no one will lay a hand on you to harm you. For there are many in this city who are my people.' He stayed there 1 year and 6 months, teaching the word of God among them. But when Gallio was proconsul at Achaia, there were some people who made a united attack on Paul and brought him before the tribunal. They said, 'This man is persuading people to worship God in ways that are contrary to the law.' Just as Paul was about to speak, Gallio said to them, 'If it were a matter of crime or serious villainy, I would be justified in accepting your complaint. But since it is a matter of questions about words and names and your own law, see to it yourselves. I do not wish to be a judge of these matters.' And so he dismissed them from the tribunal." There ends the reading.
Thank you. So we open this Council 10-year plan hearing on Friday the 11th of May 2018 at 9:40 a.m. First, ask for apologies. So we've got I'll hand over to Democracy.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. We have an apology from Councillor Mallett for lateness and an apology for Councillor Southgate for early departure. Are there any other apologies?
Sorry, Leanne, not today. It was yesterday.
Thank you.
I've already given mine in for being away for a meeting during the afternoon.
Mine are in for civic duty from 10:30 on.
Thank you both.
Moved by Councillor James, seconded Councillor Jeff. All those for, any against, carried. Confirmation of agenda.
Chair, could I just ask Democracy through you, do the provisions of standing orders apply to today's meeting?
Yes, to the extent that this is a council meeting, standing orders apply. Having said that, we also need to work through council's necessary and submissions process protocols as well.
Thank you.
But the short answer is yes.
Thank you.
So before I take this vote, I just want to make it clear that the way that I'm running this is it's 4 minutes per submitter for those who are representing themselves. If you're from an organisation or a business, it'll be 9 minutes. The idea is to give a 1 minute changeover between speakers. This is about us listening and the people giving us their opinion. Even if what they're saying isn't accurate, it's not our job to adjust or tell them otherwise. Anyone around this table is welcome to walk out of the room with that submitter and talk to that submitter one-on-one, or more of you if you want to talk with that submitter between those people, possibly getting their contacts and arranging to meet by phone later. If they're happy to give you their contacts, that will be between you and them. If you want to carry on the conversation, I don't intend to take questions. The only question I'll accept is if it's purely a clean question, purely about a clarification issue, and that would you would normally expect a yes or no answer.
Just very briefly, realising that we are really going to be pushed for time, and totally respect what you said, but we had an open briefing recently where we mentioned it was going to be 5 minutes, and so I, for one, have been talking with some submitters saying there will be 5 minutes. So will you be...
Each submitter's been talked to and told it's 4 minutes and told it's 9 minutes.
Oh, good
so
stuff.
if a councillor's overridden that,
Sweet.
It's very clear they've got 4 minutes or 9 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I accept that the usual practice for hearings is questions for clarification only. It sounded like that you're seeking even less than that, where we can only ask yes/no questions. Surely the aim of questions is to make sure that we fully understand what the submitter wants to say, and provided it is a direct question and they can answer in a sentence or whatever they feel answers the question, that should be appropriate in my view.
If the person's talked for more than 3 minutes, I won't be taking a question, because there won't be time for questions, because a question will take up to over a minute to come back on. But I am totally happy for you to walk out on a 1 minute between submitters, get their contacts and make contact with them afterwards to talk about the issue.
With all due respect, that is a very unusual process for a hearing, but if that's the way that you want to run it.
And just before I finalise the agenda, I just want to remind members, and Democracy will send out an invitation now, that on Monday morning at 8:30 we'll meet for the DC briefing that we didn't have yesterday because there weren't enough numbers here to continue with that briefing, so there was no point in doing it when less than half our members weren't here. Well, a lot of members weren't here. So that briefing will be on Monday morning at 8:30 in the tea room downstairs here. So if you can, Democracy are going to send out something for your calendars immediately, within an hour. So, all right. So, do I have a mover for the confirmation of the agenda? Councillor Mark, seconded by Councillor Siggy. All those for? Any against? Carried. Declarations of interest. Just note there are no declarations of interest. If a member realises that they're in the middle of something where they find themselves in a position where they feel compromised, then raise that at the time. You don't have to declare right now. You can declare as things come up.
Mr. Mayor, I already emailed into Democracy. I don't think it's a big thing, to be honest, but just note there are a couple of items late, and I'm not sure where they fit in the schedule, around that pertain to Airbnb. And just to note that very occasionally we host people through Airbnb, and so I do note that as a potential conflict of interest in that item.
I note exactly the same, and obviously be open to advice.
Thank you. Sorry.
Big thing, honestly, sorry. I live in the country, so I could, I could be compromised by thinking don't worry about rates.
You
It's all
live
right.
you live inside the Hamilton city boundary.
I do, but in rural.
Not that that has any bearing on it.
If
Okay, so
I just
at this point, I'm going to hand over to Julie. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify, we'd like to ask if we could leave the submission review report for the 10-year plan to be considered at the end of the verbal hearings, and then the same for the DC submission report. Though you might want to adopt that before we start the DC submissions. We ask that we leave the 10-year plan submissions report that you saw in your briefing the other day, just to lie on the table until the end of the verbal submissions. The DC, we have a DC submissions report. You might want to move to adopt that before the commencement of the DC submissions.
Chair, can I just ask Julie a question? At the end of today, it seems we've allocated half an hour for a debrief or a around-the-table discussion, I suppose. Is that to collect thoughts on the submissions that we've had today?
Yes, so if we just run through the process for today, as you hear speakers, there might be questions that you'd like answered. You have two options. You can either email them to us at the 10-year plan at hcc.govt.nz, and there are staff who will be monitoring that, or you can write them down, and at the end of today in that half an hour slot, we'll be asking if there's anything that you'd like information about, or if there's anything that you think you'd like us to make sure we could include in the deliberations report. If you have any technology issues, please just give me a wave and we'll come and make sure that you can see the submissions as we go. And just to clarify for Councillor Bunting, we have 5 and 10 minute slots. The speakers have been told in total they have 4 or 9 minutes. Yep, so it's just us trying to get them out of the seat in the last minute and changed over. Okay.
Okay, we're ready to start. Okay, so we'll call Captain Mills as our first presenter.
Thanks very much. Just to throw the cat amongst the pigeons, I was actually told 5 minutes, but that's all right. I prepared 5 minutes. I've actually probably allowed 9, so I'll speak slowly. When I was speaking with the person that was actually driving a ferry at the time, so I was probably not listening. And I'm a man, of course, which goes without saying. I'm, of course, Darren Mills from Waikato River Explorer, in front of you a couple of weeks ago in support of a recommendation that funding be given to a pontoon jetty in the city. I'm prompted to speak on my submission to the 10-year plan as a result of feedback from that decision. Since it passed through council, I've been inundated with praise and encouragement for our efforts in establishing a viable tourist business on the river and making good something out of nothing with our own funds and our own sweat. I've also been the target of an equal amount of scorn for having the absolute audacity to seek public funding to prop our business up. We will not use the facility exclusively and, of course, continue to contribute to the city's coffers via our annual lease fee and the tens of thousands we pay annually in commissions. But this means nothing to these people who still think Hamilton's a cow town and the river is something you look at as you travel across a bridge. Sadly, these little rays of sunshine are probably the most vocal in their desire to promote Hamilton as somewhere to live and nothing much else. As a convert from Auckland, I see huge potential being realised here and a council passionate about creating a city worth living in. We have some of the cheapest rates in the country. I used to live in Auckland, I know that for a fact, and I say a little more is required of us to fund growth and to continue to developing an amazing place to live and to do business. The average rate paid in Hamilton per annum is less than Tauranga, with roughly the same number of ratepayers. Closer to home, of course, that figure is a lot less than the two neighbouring authorities, Waipawa and Waikato, and even those living in Rotorua pay more, probably for the smell. But I'm really here to promote several developments mentioned in the plan. Peacock's crying out for development, close to town, bus routes, and once the ring road is completed, an even shorter journey to a revitalised CBD. Rotokauri, in my opinion, is too isolated, too far away from schools and other amenities, and although fitting in well with an out-of-date district plan. It's the wrong place for the city to be growing out of. Te Awa Lakes in Horatu, which already comes with its own amenities, in my opinion, is a far better option. And it surprises me to not see this in the city's long-term planning, especially as it borders the river and could be a catalyst for a commuter service by water. Of the city's 9 priorities, my own priorities would include 1, playground development. As a grandfather, I know the city has some top-class kids' playgrounds, and these need to be a feature of each neighbourhood. Hamilton Gardens, over 1 million visitors a year, and one of the contributing factors in Hamilton's uniqueness and attractiveness. I'm in favour of a $10 fee, as the great majority of overseas visitors expect to pay anyway, and a $10 fee isn't a great deal of money. It will also leave the gardens less reliant on funding for day-to-day operation, and as someone who's operated a business out of the gardens for the last 6 years, I have a pretty good knowledge of how that place runs. As Hamilton sees more domestic tourists than international, again from my own experience, there may be a drop-off in the short term, but in my opinion, the benefits in the long term far outweigh the negatives. I am of the opinion, however, that more infrastructure needs to be in place before the charge is introduced, so maybe not straight away. The Waikato Regional Theatre. The city needs a new purpose-built 1,300-seat theatre, but can't afford to do it alone, so the chance to fund the building of a world-class theatre by private-public partnership is an opportunity too good to pass up. Thanks to Victoria on the River, the city is now open to the river, and the proposed site of the new facility will further add to the attractiveness of the CBD. It will also bring along with it more accommodation, inventory and retail. So like Claudelands and all the others, it's an income-generating asset for the city, defraying the costs of operation. Projects that I'm not in favour of. 1, revamping Garden Place. You've probably heard that a few times. I understand the need for an open-air event space, however, spending another $3.4 million on yet another makeover is money wasted. And in my opinion, it's on the wrong side of the street. Central City Park. Victoria on the River is a spectacular development. However, I would rather see the money set aside for the park spent on putting shade sails up so you don't get burnt when you go and enjoy some time there, which is one of the only criticism I've heard of Victoria on the River. It's fantastic, but when it's really, really hot, there's no escaping the sun. River plan. Probably surprise you to hear me advocate for not spending any more money on the river plan, but aside from Wellington Street, as mentioned, and the new CBD jetty, I don't see an urgent need to spend any more money at the river level. As we saw last year, the river can rise as much as 2 metres above the bank, so any development would have to be significantly higher. The current bank's 14 metres above sea level. To get above the 100-year flood, you'd have to go up to 17 or 18. That's a long way up. And Victoria on the River is not too much further up. So if you did build something at river level at 14 above, then your infrastructure is going to be underwater a couple of times a year. Plans for the redevelopment of the riverfront look spectacular, in my opinion, fraught with issues, however, as I've mentioned, that could blow out the costs. Victoria on the River and some decent pathways to the museum, I believe, will suffice. Hamilton welcomes 1.42 million guests annually to our hotels, motels and hostels, and with something like 4.82 million domestic visitors, which we already know, of course. We currently boast a 10% share of the business events market and a share of delegate days at just under 9%. Hard to believe that some locals still believe visitors only use the place for a loo stop. Hamilton used to be called the city of the future. It wasn't then, but it can be now, in my opinion. Thank you very much. Might have been just over 5 minutes, Councillor Mark.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you. Good morning, Darren. What infrastructure, more infrastructure should be in place before the charge is introduced at the gardens? What infrastructure, please?
City jetty. All about creating that half-day experience. And I think I might be quoting yourself saying that Hamilton needs another half-day activity, and we're not quite there yet, and it would be too much of a deterrent in the short term. But things are happening, so...
So, Councillor Paula, I want a question of clarification only, and what I really want is just... I don't want you to continue with your promoting your submission. I want you just to say directly back what the question was. So the question was... you've answered that one, but just...
My question was, plainly for clarification, what infrastructure was
We're already
needed for the
25
job?
minutes behind, councillor Paula, so I'm trying to keep
I-
this on time.
Fair enough,
And I
Mr
want to
Mayor,
keep
but
the
you
questions, and I'm
asked for a
not talking
question
to
for
you, I'm talking to
clarification.
everybody around this table. I want to keep your questions directly to things of clarification. As I've said, I'm happy for you to walk out with the person. If they're happy to give you their contacts, you can talk till your heart's content to clarify your concerns.
Okay.
So there is an opportunity to leave a door open for you to talk to the people afterwards. Any other questions, councillor Paula? Councillor
Quick
Mark.
question.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Mr.
thank you.
Mills. Mr. Wallace.
Your Worship, councillors, it's been a long, long time since I've been in these chambers, and I can't say I've particularly missed it, but I felt enough passion for the things I wrote about that I felt I just had to be here and emphasise the points that I've made in the written submission. My background's a bit mixed. I, with my wife's family, own Hot Gossip Bra Shop, which is based out at Te Awa, and I'm a chartered accountant who was working for one of the bigger firms in Hamilton for many, many years. I'm a former president of Tourism Waikato, and I've been a Hamiltonian and very proud of it since I immigrated from the UK in 1980. I think, for me, looking at the plan, the biggest difference was not so much what are we trying to do, but how are we trying to fund what we're doing. And some of that had a direct impact upon us. So in terms of challenge one regarding the rates, my answer is simple. Of the 6 options available, I choose none of them. The main option that's been given and preferred by council involves a move to capital value rating immediately. That has a significant and highly detrimental effect on our small family business. We operate out of a mall, and in my submission there's a lot more detail as to the reasoning behind why we are there. But we do not get a choice as to what rates we pay as part of that. We signed up for a 7-year lease on an understanding of decisions made by previous councils, and we feel betrayed. We feel let down that the council is even considering moving from it when businesses such as ours have no chance whatsoever to control our rates costs, and we will bear the full burden, not our landlord, because that's what's written in the lease. The numbers I've been given and the calculations I've done, and as an accountant I would hope I have those right, but I'm happy, obviously outside this meeting from what His Worship has said, to be talking to anybody that can correct me if they believe I'm wrong, but the calculation boils down to the rates that we pay today compared to the 1st of July 2019 is a 125% increase if the council's proposed option goes ahead. That is possibly unsustainable, certainly a huge cost to a small family business, and has a detrimental impact on us, our customers, the services we offer, and on our employees, and to our view, unacceptable. The second portion that I wanted to briefly comment on is, over the years, I have become more and more involved in local theatre. And please, the fact that I choose to comment today on the Waikato Regional Theatre does not mean to say that I hold no views about the other options that are there, and certainly also the fact that I make no submission on any of those items does not mean I support them or do not support them. It means I have not been able to take the time to form an informed opinion, and I refuse to make a submission based upon something that isn't as best as I can based upon fact. The theatre, though, for me, is something I have become passionate about. I got involved, dragged in might be a better word, with local theatre, and as a result of that have learned a lot more about what we need in terms of theatres in the area. We do not have a venue where many, many shows can be held, or events. When I think of the thousands and thousands of dollars I've spent over the years travelling to Auckland to spend money in Auckland that could have been spent here if only we could have put on the sorts of events I was going to attend. Without the theatre, we will never be able to put on some of those events. It gives us a wonderful opportunity. It will become a huge jewel in our cultural crown as far as I'm concerned. We have ad nauseum debated it. Please do not revisit it. accept what's been done, accept what's been said, accept the decisions made by previous councils. Let's commit to it, let's make it happen, and let's make Hamilton a better place to live, which is culturally vibrant and is a great river city. And I'll leave it there to give you more time for everybody else, or in fact, maybe even questions, sir.
Do we have any questions? No.
Mayor, have you planned financially to absorb the transition to capital value over the 7 years?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now call. Okay. Now call Mr. Stuart Gordon, please. Okay. Okay, so you've got two submissions. One is a personal one, and the other is an organisation. So that's a total of 13 minutes. You can mix them up in whatever way you want. The clock will be set at 13 minutes. So off you go.
So, Mr. Chairman, I first want to talk on behalf of Waikato Innovation Park, being now a privately owned venture out there at the park. The first thing I want to talk about is that we have large plans going ahead. We want to implement those plans. We have plans to invest, as Waikato Innovation Park, in front of us about $20 million of expansion, all in line with a present plan that exists within the district plan that carried over from the Waikato district plan. The first issue I want to talk to is the objection to the movement to capital value straight away. The effect, according to the calculation based around what you use on the website, is a 63% increase in the rates at the park. That reflects in approximately a $22 a square metre change in the rents I have to put on our tenants come 1st of July. Given the fact that I think about 4 years ago we sat around here talking, finally getting capital value over the line, which I agree with entirely, but effectively I think it's an element of trust with the council. Once you entered into that agreement, you got it over by a small margin to get it over the line, and now to change your mind 3 years later to increase it automatically, going straight to the end point. We think the 10-year movement to continue, so I can then talk to my tenants about increases over that 10-year period. So that's the first thing. The second thing is Waikato Innovation Park. Our district, our plan has within this expansion, and one is a real concern to us, is Ruakura Road. It is now literally full now with growth that's happened outside of the Tainui's development, outside of our development. It's virtually full now. We have in 2 years' time, the expressway will release another bunch of traffic, probably from both the south, north, and obviously from Morrinsville down Ruakura Road. All these outside any growth plans that Tainui and us have to have. So in the present plan, in 2027, you have the funding designated in that period. We'd like to see that brought forward. In fact, we think should actually happen almost immediately, because the growth plans of both Tainui and ourselves really needs some sort of commitment to that. So that's the issue I have with them. I understand your balance sheet. What concerns to me about your projections and balance sheets is around Peacocks Road, is how much of that balance sheet will be used as a result of Peacocks Road. So it's not a case of the cost, etc. It's a case of the opportunity cost of what can be done over the next 15 years, especially in an economic sense. And I think Hamilton has great opportunities. I can think of opportunities maybe in wet businesses, but that will need infrastructure and the ability, once you've committed to Peacocks Road, to spend those extra, because I remember a discussion here about concern of the balance sheet going over 140 million, I think it was, of borrowings, and I think the projections here, I can't remember, it's 230 or 260, it's those sorts of numbers. So that's a big leap forward. It commits you for such a long time. So it's not just the direct costs I'm concerned about, it's the opportunity costs of the next 15 years around that economic development. And that goes to the heart of probably why the 2027 spine road is put in at that time, because the balance sheet is used up. It has to wait until that time before that can happen. So that's really my submission on behalf of Waikato Innovation Park. As I say, that's, I don't know if there's any questions on that.
We'll just keep going, we'll address any.
So the next one is not my personal one, it's actually on the basis of Food Waikato, so that is a subsidiary of the Hamilton City Council. Again, the objection moving straight to capital value, we have to make commitments like most firms over a year out to our pricing, what we should do. Again, we've got a 63% increase just on that moving on capital value. And obviously that will reflect on profitability and our inability to pass on those costs to our customers. They're exporters, in some cases they're foreign owned, in most cases they're local. So really it's the same point. The commitment to do it over 10 years was made, and now that's changed, so our planning has had to change. And on par of Food Waikato, again, it's really around the spine road and the development. We have a new spray dryer we're excited about, and the growth. And with Ruakura Road, we're really quite concerned about the roading and the capabilities there. So that's the end of it, my presentation.
Councillor Mark.
What's a wet business?
Well, a spray dryer is a wet business in the fact that it has to get through a lot of wastewater is produced as a result of that business. Okay. And there's a whole lot of other opportunities.
So you're talking about
Greenlee's the same. Greenlee's right. I consider a wet business. Dairy goat. Yeah, water intensive businesses.
Okay, thank you. Cool.
Thank you. Okay, have we got anybody in the chamber who's waiting to be heard?
Bit of time, so
Nobody here.
no, I see.
Okay, we'll take the tea break that's on our schedules. We'll take now, so we'll be back at 10:25.
Yeah, we will
absolutely
end up,
fine.
we'll
We'll
end
just-
up running ahead most probably, so don't need to rush them too much.
Well, I just don't want to get into
Questions
This
about-
is about us listening.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely.
Mr Stark. Okay, you have 10 minutes, 9 minutes to speak, or if you finish earlier, we will take questions up to 9 minutes. Gary, just for your benefit, if there's any questions, it's clarification only. It's not to put a political view out there, and is short and precise, and you'd expect the answers from the submitter to be short and precise as well. To the point is what I'm saying. Thank you.
Jokes, eh? Hey, thank you for the opportunity to submit, and good morning to everybody. One of the submissions we submitted on was the Ward Street upgrade, the one on from Girls High, running down to running down into where Centre Place is, to the warehouse, and we just saw it as a good opportunity to put another proposal in front of you guys. We're spending $45 million in the next, kicking off in 2 weeks actually, for the redevelopment of Kmart, and part of the plan was to throw that in the mix because it's a road that has been hugely utilised and underdeveloped over many years. So we went to Wintec, spoke to them, and they think it's a great idea as well. So that's where we're at with that. And I think one of the things is what it does is it links the cycleway coming through from Norris Ward Park into the city, and it's a great opportunity to work in with, I suppose, us being the property owners, now that we've picked up the land under the Ward Street stuff as well, just recently. So we're pretty committed to that area, and would like to see how we can do a partnership with the council. I haven't put any costs in it. It was just really a last minute. The plan was given some thought, but it was a last minute approach around that, and it's a good opportunity to work in, and working with council on that. Also, the feedback on the Victoria on the River Park has been incredible, and now with our last restaurant down there, it's just been sold out every night, which is great to see that the Hamilton public are pretty positive towards that Central Park. So from our tenants, the feedback's been that they like to see more of that, and so we've sort of gone through the 45 tenants that we have in our properties and asked their opinion on it, and obviously the rates thing comes up as well, but if money is to be spent, they think that it's worthwhile being spent on the river. So that's the view of our tenants. And pretty much that's all I have to really say. So look, we're in favour of working with council. I can come back and put some costings around that on the Ward Street proposal. but also working with the cycleway, the infrastructure fund that the upgrade. I don't know the proper lingo, but you know some funds, something around like that. But as private landlords as well, we're prepared to put money into it as well, because we see it's beneficial for everybody. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillor Dave, any comments on Ward Street? Okay. We've got time, we've got no submitters waiting.
So the only question then is, have you been in touch with Robin Denton from our transport group?
Yeah.
Because we've got budget for the cycles part of perhaps
Yeah,
what you're
Gina
talking
in our
about.
office has spoken to Robin, I believe Robin about it, and there was budget in that, the cycleway, and there was some budget in the renewals project, renewals as well.
So it's good. I just want to check that the two were being worked together.
Yeah. So we've had some conversations around that. So it's not just a left field idea.
Yeah. No, definitely not. Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Some time with the outside too, but with regards to the design you've submitted here, is that like an indicative design sort of a thing, or is that what you want to do?
Look, it's probably a first cut concept plan, because like I kind of don't like throwing good money at bad if it's not a great idea. So it's probably could go through a develop phase of design, but it certainly is an option. We're just making it more user friendly, and we're not losing any car parks as well with that.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll talk to Matt outside about the rest.
Well, there is time now, so you're
Okay, I just
welcome
want
to fire ahead.
No, it's not appropriate in this meeting, but it's all cool. Okay. Thank you. No drama.
With the Garden Place proposal, as you would no doubt have seen, there was pushback from the public on the $2.8 million spend, which your group was putting up $800,000 for.
Yep.
I understand there has been a group come forward to say they'll put up funding for another $500,000 in there. If would you be prepared to work further at raising more philanthropic funds for that project to try and bring it to 100%?
Absolutely. Look, I think it's a plan that I think the trouble with Garden Place is the name's still Garden Place. So when you're saying you're putting cars in a garden, it's I think my mother would be upset if I parked my car in the garden as well. So I think it's a change, because we've got the waterfront project happening, Victoria on the River, and I think that's more of our civic meeting place rather than Garden Place. Not to destroy it, and I feel very strongly, if the plan moved a little bit, I feel very strongly that we shouldn't sell it or build on it or anything like that, because we'll look back in years to come and think that was a huge mistake. I don't think we should be afraid of open space, because this city is humming, and the intent and inquiry is incredible at the moment. So we're on the cusp of some good stuff in this city. To just give you a perspective, we've got 28,000 square metres of space in the CBD, and we've got 114 square metres available. So. In our property. So that's just to give you an overview of how it is humming, But yeah, Garden Place, look, happy to work with anybody and to tweak the plans as well, but making sure it's right for the people of Hamilton.
Very good. Anybody else have a question to take the opportunity to ask Mark?
And I think the other thing, just quickly on the rates thing. Look, it's just the view of all our tenants, because we're going to have a significant rate rise across our tenants, but it's kind of a question: do you want to pay more money? No, but if it's what is required for Hamilton City, yes. And I suppose the challenge is: do we want to buy a cheeseburger at McDonald's for $2, and then get taken away the patty as well, and then get charged $3 for it? Probably not. So it's a challenge for the leaders of our city to show that there is true value in what we're paying, because that's what we're hearing at the moment. It's like our tenants are all going, why are we paying more? So it's the communication around that as well, which I think is real key. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we have no more submitters, so we'll stop until 11:15. Yeah, I realise that now. I saw that go and talk to him, I realised he must be connected with him.
Hey, now can I just grab you for a minute? Sorry to interrupt, we'll just While I've got Andrew, can I say Christine Norris is going to be strong because she wants to sit up front where you're sitting. And we have very quite a nerve you can sit up here. So we have, notwithstanding your comment about people allowed to present whatever format, we've said we're not presenting about the arrangement. I said I'm happy to vacate my chair. I originally offered that I was happy to vacate my chair. But it's going to create considerable delays in my team to say, push back one more time. If I push back one more time, if that fails, we can get my seat, then someone can operate it from there. But I just wanted to let Andrew know the presence of Mr. Hunter? Yes. Thank you, sir.
Welcome, Jeff Hunter. You have 4 minutes, so just fire away when you're ready.
Sure.
4 minute includes any questions.
Good morning. My name's Jeff from the Hunter household in Flagstaff. I'd just like to say a few words to sort of outline things from my perspective. The Hamilton City Council is a monopoly that has run itself into debt, largely through mismanagement. Debt levels are projected to reach $1 billion within the next 10 years, I believe, and the council are now appealing to ratepayers for direction and a bailout. It is more important now, more than ever, that the council runs itself as an efficient business, delivering affordable value to its customers. Households represent the council's largest customer group. Households also form the very basis of our community. Sadly, it will largely fall on households, I believe, to fix the deficit. However, unlike businesses, most households run on fixed incomes that will lag well behind inflation. What's more, households buy local goods and services, therefore a rates rise has a secondary inflationary effect. The council must transition to the capital rate system over 2 years, I feel, to enable households to budget for it. In the meantime, the council must halt spending on non-essential projects and facilities to ease the burden on households until the books are rebalanced. Households simply cannot be expected to fix the current deficit and continue subsidising high levels of growth. Where is the cost benefit to households in that? We understand the cost benefits to developers and greenbelt landowners. The Hamilton City Council must make households central to its future business decisions and deliver affordable value to its customers now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Andrew. Jeff, what specifically would you suggest that ratepayers would appreciate if council were to reduce services or drop services?
I think
Services or buildings or things like that?
I think most ratepayers feel that there are a lot of services being provided that are underutilised.
So
And-
Jeff, can you
and-
give us specific things you can, and you may not be prepared for this, but you know, to say there are some things that people don't want doesn't help
Okay.
us.
Okay, well, coming back to your list of projects, most people would not utilise a lot of those, I believe. They would be underutilised. And to...
Jeff, I'm sorry, but we're building roads and we're building parks.
Okay, roads are essential.
So you need to
Essential
be
services
Sorry.
can be justified, from my point of view, but unessential expenditure, things that can be deferred, should be deferred, to focus on the deficit, squaring the deficit.
Okay, all right, thank you. And do you think that it's better if, for some things, we moved away from charging them based on your property value, i.e. rates, and started charging for the use of the service, i.e. user pays for some things?
Yes, I think user pays for some things would be a fair approach.
Okay, again, I'm going to ask you, what things do you think we could be user paid that we don't do
Well,
now?
the council gardens for outsiders, I think would be
The Hamilton Gardens?
Yes.
Yep.
Buses, definitely. I think buses are heavily subsidised and underutilised, which doesn't make sense economically.
That's good, thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much for your time and your presentation. Okay, are you Jonathan from First Trust? Yes, come forward, thank you. So thank you very much for coming. You have 9 minutes. That includes any questions.
Yes.
Just relax and present.
And I'm going to represent for the council that because they put some money for the more playgrounds for the children and comes to the school after school holidays. Because we have like a portable playgrounds for the kids to entertain themselves in like in Hamilton central area, so they could have a bit more like in Hamilton East or main towns, have more playgrounds for the kids to entertain themselves. And for the roads, for the diverse, more roads for the, we have like a less traffic to go to like towards Auckland, Tauranga, Wellington, basically to go to the airports as well, as part of the submissions. Because they have less traffic on the road, and you have less the accidents on the roads, and have like a car crash or speedings. Probably to cut down on the speedings on the roads for their safeties, and plus keep themselves safe as well. Because like the gentleman mentioned about the buses, that have more buses in each suburb in Waikato and Hamilton, because they have like more buses and more transports, and also that and have a lot cheaper for the paying the buses to get on and off for the passengers on board, and also there's a lot cheaper for the children as well, and also then they have the surveillance cameras in each buses as well to monitor it as well. And to have more opportunity for for communities, and also for the kind of like have more portable homes for the homeless people who have been living on the streets as well. Could try and have less people have more homes as well. And apart from that, is for the community have and take part of fundraising as well. To support it is for support the funding for the transport centres and have less fundings for the more roads to the diverted whether towards Tauranga, Auckland, whenever the travellers would love to go as well. Mainly in Hamilton, probably to the focus on the playgrounds there for the children can play on, like in have for after schools or could be before school or after schools, and the kids can have free time after school, like because when they finish like at 3 o'clock or 2:30, so the kids they have bit of have free time after school, something like that, and because they have less for the kids they have less majorities for the kids, and they have to have fun for themselves and for the parents to monitor for the kids as well, rather than sending the kids to the park by themselves, and also the parents making sure they keeping the children safe.
Thank you very much. Councillor James.
Thank you, Jonathan, for coming in.
Thank you.
Hey, now look, there's been just a question here on your submission here on question 8. There has been a bit of confusion there.
Yes.
You've ticked yes for the 70 million for the 9 projects. Just confirming here with you, because you've ticked yes for the Central Park,
Yes.
Garden Place, Indoor Recreation, Playground Development and Rotorua Hub.
Yes.
Are you for those or against those?
For that.
You're for those?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Dave.
I was going to ask the identical question. It's all good.
Yeah, it's very good feedback. Councillor Gary.
Thank you. Thanks, Jonathan. You said you were concerned about homes for the homeless.
Yes.
And affordable homes. We're being told that nowadays you can't buy a home for much more. I mean, we're suggesting that brand new homes, you probably couldn't get one for less than $500,000. So I guess you could get a much smaller, older home for maybe, at the least, maybe $250,000.
Yeah.
How on earth do we get a person who's homeless, who presumably has nothing? How do we get them into a home?
Because to have discussion with the publicities and the community to and how much we can spend on and how much we can afford for a home for the homeless people, that and keep them warm and keep their health.
Yeah, not denying that homes are important, but how would we fund that? Or would it be council? Do you think it should be council's job that does that?
Yes.
So who would pay for that?
Excuse me, Councillor Gary. I don't think that's a fair question. I mean, it's for us,
It's
for central government, to decide where the money will come from for housing the homeless. I don't think it's.
But I mean, it's exactly the same as my user pays versus rate payable versus da-da-da question.
I believe Jonathan shown his desire to house the homeless, it's up to us to then to use that to decide whether we're
Surely
going to get involved
it's an
and help.
appropriate question to say, how would you fund that?
I don't think it's a fair question, Gary. I think the desire is to see the vulnerable housed. It's up to then us to pick that up and decide how we're going to do it, if we're going to do it. Any other questions? Right, well, thank you very much for your presentation. It's very good, and thank you for the heart you have for the people.
Thank you.
Okay, we will break again, but if people could just stay in either smoker room or in this area, so that we can call you back at short notice rather than put a time on how long we're going to break for. And we will check the committee rooms if you're not around, if you want to make phone calls or work on your computers. So the 3 rooms in here, just to make sure there's not somebody in there on the phone or something if submitters come. Yes?
Could I suggest that from Monday, it might be hard for the rest of today, that the staff, rather than giving exact times to people, which leaves us with lots of little gaps all through, they group people and say you're in the 10 to 11 a.m. group or the 10 to 10:40 group or something like that, and there's half a dozen in that group. So they all come in the first and first served, and then we have if there's going to be gaps, it's a decent sized gap at the end of the group rather than individual little time slots. I think that's going to tie us in knots and have us in and out all the time, and with no useful spare time because it's too short.
Yeah, just agreeing with Dave, but also even overlapping people slightly because, yeah, if there's any people's away, we can carry on rolling through.
Yeah, we won't ask for an answer from staff. I think they've got the message. They'll do what they think's, whatever they can do. It's appropriate to keep it moving from Monday on. So.
Is it going to be your position that you don't ask how we're going to fund a project from now on?
Yeah, that's what we all agreed at the start. What, like it or not. It's up for us to debate
But is it
that.
appropriate for us to say, do you think that the gardens, I mean, we asked these in our actual consultation,
We didn't ask.
Hang on, should there be a user pay fee for the gardens or not? So surely it's appropriate to ask people who should pay for those things.
Gary, we could have changed the questions here. We had it up to us to change what the questions were, to add to them. There is the one about the gardens, and that guy did answer it.
The question is, how do we fund things? Is that not an appropriate thing? Hang on, David. Is that not an appropriate question to ask our citizens?
Should have
put it. That is fundamental.
Should have put it in the document.
Do you want to? Hang on. The person's here to submit to us.
Yep.
And she submitted to us that she would like to see the vulnerable on the streets housed. It's not up to her to come up with a business plan of how she's going to do it. It's up to her to tell us. Jonathan, sorry, it's up to Jonathan to tell us what he would like to see happen. It's up to us to work out whether we're going to pick that up and how we're going to fund it.
And it's not right for us to ask him, do you think that should be user pays? Because I asked him, the other chap before that, exactly that, and you thought it was acceptable.
I just don't want to see the public come in here who don't necessarily have a high level of financial intellect all the time, not all of them, who then feel trapped by us saying, well, where's the money going to come from? It's up to them to tell us what they would like in the plan, and obviously we have our budget, and then it's a matter of whether we're going to allocate some of our budget to what they're asking for. So obviously, if they're coming in to submit to us to say they want to see the vulnerable housed, it's coming out of our budget if we're going to pick up that idea.
So there are some questions we can't ask?
Some questions I will be careful on. I said at the beginning I wanted questions of clarification only, short and precise, which also where we would expect a short and precise answer. It's for them to submit to us.
We are genuinely trying to get the views of our people.
I'll hand this over to Richard to take over from here.
Well, I didn't want to take over. I wanted to talk to him.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. User pays or by rates is an appropriate question to ask.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. really appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm not even a dig, Gary.
Yeah, I know.
Back at me.
I just find this atrocious.
So the question about how we fund it, a general question, asking someone on the spot to actually come up with a financial model is one thing, but a general question.
Do you honestly
No,
think
I
I was
finished,
saying
Gary.
that I want a spreadsheet with numbers like that? I said, what is the general purpose?
So hang on, just we'll continue this offline, so we'll just break now until the next submitters come. But you can continue talking, but we're offline now.
He's got a couple of questions in there like that.
And so we're not allowed to ask that question. So we're not allowed to ask that
Hey
question
guys,
today.
we are breaking now until the next submitter comes.
And when this
Okay, welcome, Mr. Pratesing. We'll hand over to
Thank
you. You have 4 minutes to present, so Thank you. Just start when you're ready.
Thank you very much for the opportunity given. My main concern about the document was, though it says that it is a financial strategy, it looked more like a rate increase proposal document. If it is a strategy document, I would expect that to have had a thorough analysis of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats of our city. And we have a lot of strengths. Of course, there are weaknesses, opportunities and threats. I have not gone into the details because of the time. And also, there obviously has to be a quick analysis of the budgets and the performance of the major projects from our city as well as other cities, if possible. We can learn from not only our experiences, but also others' experiences. And also, we must be on a continuous basis having a quality assurance system that has the PDCA and SDCA cycles, Plan, Do, Check, Act, as well as Standardized Do, Check, Act. And a financial strategy also, I thought, should consider a full range of existing and potential revenue generation streams, effective and efficient spending and cost saving, wastage, that is reducing wastage and considering cost reduction and recovery options, thinking out of the box. That is important. Think out not the traditional way of doing things. Synergies, partnerships, technology, and belt-tightening options should be considered. One of the major concerns about the city, I would think, which is a ticking time bomb, is the city planning and transport. We came to the country 21 years back. Since then, there has been a serious deterioration in the traffic conditions on the roads. Intercity transportation bypasses, intercity connectivity, mass rapid transport systems, growing traffic congestion, root causes, out-of-the-box solutions based on experiences, research, and partnerships, as well as strategies should be considered. The rates computation formula, land value, capital value, UAGC, SUIP, honestly quite confusing for a layman like me and frustrating. And the changeover to capital value has become not a broken promise. Any attempts to be fair by introducing UAGC should not affect other people. And then we can learn from the Japanese, from the first principle, think of how to make improvements without spending money. If ideas for Kaizen are not forthcoming, think and think hard and use up the total capacity of your brain and that of others, and especially those closer to you on a day-to-day basis. There's a popular saying among Japanese managers in challenging their staff, the company does not have much money, so we cannot give more money. If you have no money, introduce improvements, use your brain. If you have no brain, sweat it out or borrow it from others. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you very much for your submission. Right. All right.
If you have any questions, otherwise I have, we are so close to Auckland, and the current government is talking about regional development, and we can do a lot. we can get the whole thing turned in our favor. Are we doing enough? And we, in a sense, we have a strength of having both the mayor and the deputy mayor being very successful business people who can negotiate. Are we doing enough? What can we do? How can we make a difference? Not the way we had been doing 10, 20, 30 years back or 30 years on. How can we think out of the box and make a difference for our people? And ever since I came, the rates have increased. I have not seen any significant improvement in the services. But my sister-in-law visited recently from India. She said, oh, New Zealand is like a heaven on earth. We are proud of it. We are proud of it. I'm not undermining anything, but we have a lot to do, and we have to do as a team.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pratapsang. We're out of time now, so thank you very much for your presentation. There is no time for questions. The time's up, so thank you. Okay, Aaron. So this is Aaron Wong from Generation Zero. You have 10 minutes to present, 9 minutes to present, including any questions. So thank you, Aaron.
I'll just give you a brief overview of who Generation Zero is. So Generation Zero is a group of young people who are working towards a future without pollution. We believe in vibrant cities, clean transport and smart resource use. We also believe in a fair and just transition, recognising that we do have inequality in our society. So I'll go through in the order of the challenges that were presented in the consultation document. First one, we're borrowing to pay for everyday costs. Generation Zero prefers option 2. We recognise that it is a challenge to meet the needs of a growing city. We also realise that an infrastructure deficit or building poor quality infrastructure is unacceptable. Capital value rates may send the wrong price signal in terms of density of new development, so we are opposed to them. The upfront changes to rates should be graduated to give certainty to ratepayers about what they will be facing. Alternative funding schemes for significant localised infrastructure and community facilities could be funded by things such as land value capture, and this should be investigated. While someone else is willing to put up money for some projects, this is not necessarily the best option just because someone else is going to pay some of it. If it is the wrong option, we could end up paying more in the long run or causing further problems down the line. We believe that the UAGC is unfair and acts as a subsidy for people with bigger, fancier houses and is unfair on the more vulnerable people in the city. We also recognise that user pays has unintended consequences and tends to hit the poorest hard. Challenge 2, deciding where Hamilton's next big housing area will be. We actually support the Rotorua option. We believe that developing Rotorua requires less capital to get it going, and that eases some of the initial capital requirement. Peacock will need to be developed towards the end of the plan, but we believe with the right investment focus, we'll be better placed to handle that growth in vehicular traffic and whatever, because we would have already matured and reduced our infrastructure deficit by that time. There is proven road capacity near Rotorua. That's not the only mode that we want to use, but we don't know the effect of the opening of the Waikato Expressway and the Waiririri Drive extension. The barrier of the river does make congestion-free mass transit and access to community facilities difficult for people in Peacocks. And under the new government, the Southern Links is unlikely to be a priority, which could represent quite a risk to council. This government is also likely to invest in enabling housing in either area to go forward with the Kiwi Build promises. So yes, the previous governments gave a housing infrastructure fund, but we're yet to see what this government's come out with, and that will come out next Thursday. This should all be alongside infill housing, and we think that the council's infill target is about right. For Challenge 3, improving Hamilton's transport system, Generation Zero prefers option 3, which is to increase spending by 10% above the baseline. Congestion finds its own balance point. Bigger roads means more cars, more congestion. Borrowing to fund infrastructure, such as transport infrastructure, is a fair way to fund long-lived assets, because these benefits are going to be reached by generations to come. And if we can't pay for it up front, doesn't mean that we can't have it, because what constrains growth. With the ring road nearly complete, we need to make up for the underinvestment in public and active transport. There is quite a large gap that we have to make up, and we can't do that by slowing down investment. So I understand that when you go to ratepayers and go, we want to raise your rates, that's not very popular, but we need to look at this in the long run of what do we actually need to do to stop it getting worse. We need to make sure that any road projects supposedly to ease congestion actually remove bottlenecks and they improve safety, not just shifting the problem to the next intersection, because that's not good transport investment. We also strongly support Council's Vision Zero commitment, and we believe that leading it is a high quality, safe walking, biking and public transport infrastructure network. We support an immediate start to the schools link, which would relieve congestion in that area and the high loadings on the Orbiter bus route. We believe that bike infrastructure needs to be a connected network of separated, safe bikeways on main routes with the existing painted lanes and traffic calming in quieter areas. We also believe that park and ride parking is actually an inefficient investment to shift people towards public transport. We do not support it except for possibly the Hamilton to Auckland service, as the times that will be leaving won't be suited to public transport. It's all about taking road trips off the expressway. We know that park and ride takes land away from housing, recreation and business and is an inefficient use of land, which is increasingly becoming scarce and expensive. To Challenge 4, we don't actually have a specific preference on these projects. It's a bit outside our remit, but we do have comments on other projects. We've consistently opposed the conversion of Garden Place into parking for private vehicles and replacing the existing pedestrian zone with an unnecessary road link. We continue to believe that this reduces safety and increases congestion due to encourage rat running and the induced presence of vehicles searching for available parking. The conversion of pedestrian space to car and pedestrian space is totally out of step with the visions and targets of council and is not an approach that has been taken anywhere else in New Zealand. Even with the free parking trial, occupancy rates are within council targets and there is no need for more parking. Generation Zero supports council to enhance the Waiwhakariki Natural Heritage Park development and showcasing local biodiversity. We also support the proposed funding model for the rubbish and recycling service. However, we would support an additional charge on rates for people who choose to have more rubbish bins. A user-pay system for rubbish would likely increase illegal dumping in Hamilton, and that's because we don't currently charge for curbside collection and we don't believe that's a appropriate funding model. We also have concerns about the regressive impacts of fuel levies, though we do accept that they can be another revenue stream to fund transport projects that might otherwise not be funded. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Aaron, for your comprehensive presentation. You spoke about bike lanes and you talked, I think, if I heard you right, you talked about separation. I think that at the moment we try and achieve that with just a white strip of paint. Is that, are you, it's not satisfactory, or are you wanting more than that?
Right, I'm saying that a painted lane is not satisfactory. So what we've seen in Christchurch is when they've done separated cycle lanes, they don't just use paint, they use planter boxes, concrete barriers or whatever. That means that you're physically separated from the road space, because a painted lane is always ignored by road users. They'll cut across them at intersections and all sorts. So if you want to have children and you want to have adults and all people, older people, whoever, using cycleways, you don't put them on the road with a bit of paint, you actually protect them, because at the moment the cycleways which are on the road with just paint, that's just part of the road. That's not a safe route.
So you don't think the painted line have any impact?
They do have some impact, but if we're wanting to actually grow the number of people on bikes, reduce the number of people on cars and ease the congestion on our buses, then we need to provide infrastructure that is suitable for the users that we want to attract to it. We've so far built lots and lots of roads and we've attracted lots and lots of cars. And I don't think that's sustainable. It's highly expensive. We've seen that from the spending that we've done previously. we need to move our focus.
So would you recommend moving bikes off roads onto footpaths?
No. There are cases where you would have shared paths, where you do have the space for that, but that needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis.
So in a situation where we're retrofitting rather than, okay, new roads might be able to do this, but if we're retrofitting, what would be the process there?
Well, the process is that you go through the design process. Sometimes you'll need to remove parking, sometimes you'll need to remove a traffic lane, sometimes you'll need to remove a median. It works elsewhere, it will work here.
The median which separates traffic in the middle of the road?
Well, yes, because that's only used part of the time for people turning, and if you lowered the traffic speed, you reduce the congestion, they'll be able to turn anyway. It's unused space that the ratepayers are paying for that's providing very little safety benefit.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Now, so thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, Graham Mead. What organisation from? What organisation is he from? Graham, what organisation are you from?
I'm the Centre Manager of the Hamilton YMCA.
So,
which is part of the Auckland Regional and now Tauranga as well, yeah.
It just doesn't say here, I know you're involved in a lot of things, it doesn't say what.
Probably too many things, but yeah, at the moment the YMCA is what I'm speaking on behalf of today.
So Graham, you have 9 minutes, including questions, so
Done.
Go ahead.
Firstly, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to the Council and this submission today. Part of my submission is that the YMCA, when we invested in the return of the property up in Pembroke Street to the YMCA some 6 years ago, I've been in management there now for 5. And when we took it up, it was in a dire financial strait. In fact, it was broke and had no investment placed in it. And part of the changes were when we took it over, we immediately lost $80,000 worth of funding from the council that produced our youth program. So since then, we've invested in ourselves, we've invested in the building, internals and external, and as of now, it had a turnover of just over $1 million when we took over and 40 staff. We now have 107 staff, and the turnover has now placed us in a profit area by growth and youth development within knowing what we're doing and sticking to our onions. Part of this is you've got a long term of building pools out at Rotorua perspective. The board from the Auckland YMCA is in a cash-rich facility at the moment. It has no debt, it has no liabilities to anyone, and we have a substantial amount of money that we'd like to invest in Hamilton. We believe that the Waikato is the place it's from, and we want to be a partner in the development of pools and facilities. My big challenge is being the manager of a place like the YMCA. We have no outside funding. We get a little bit from some trusts, but everything we do, we fund ourselves, including about 140K of giving away last year to families who have nothing. These are families who don't have kids, who don't have parents, and who've been abandoned by their parents, and we fund and grant those from our own money to ensure that they've got sport, recreation, health programs, diabetes, camps, send a family to camp where we send families away to Camp Adair, which we own. We do that ourselves because that is our community direction as a charity. My challenge at the moment that we find there's so many government organisations, and these by MOE and council and government organisations who have venues who don't pay market rates for the upkeep of them, they don't pay market rates for building them, they don't pay market rates for sustaining them, but we go into the market with our stadium and we can't get $70 an hour to hire out the stadium because schools and other operations are hiring them out at $40 because they're funded by government organisations. Now, how is we as a charity trying to stand on our own 2 feet can compete in a market and keep stadium open? I continually hear things of stadiums saying, let's build more stadiums. They're unsustainable unless you have a business plan around them to develop other stuff with it, like pools, like fitness, like other things that go on. And for me, I have a passion about the city. I have a passion about where we want to take it. The YMCA Hamilton's just taken over Tauranga as well, so we've expanded our a bit, but it's about families, it's about community, but most of all, my board wants to invest back into Hamilton. And the figure they've given me so far is somewhere between $5 and $8 million now as part of a long-term plan to invest in pools, water and stadium as a business unit that can stand alone. And as I've sort of proven up in Pembroke Street, you can do it without funding. You can take a business operation and they shouldn't be getting propped up by a whole lot of government corporate money, they should stand alone. They should pay their own way. And if they can't, you aim for a flat line. Look, we're not a corporate that's got to make a lot of money. We aim for a flat line thing. But for me, super exciting to be sitting in front of a council saying we've got some money to invest as a charity. Super exciting that some of my staff can come here too and say, look, 90% of our staff are first-time workers. We give just about every one of our staff as their first job. And the last thing I'd like to add is in the last month, the YMCA of Auckland and Hamilton has become the only organisation in New Zealand, it's like an ISO standard, that has received ChildSafe. So we are the only registered ChildSafe organisation in New Zealand, bar none. And for me, that goes with the 700 to 800 kids a month we look after, a day I mean, and the 10,000 people that pass through our stadium. So any questions? Yeah, but for me, we want to be part of the council's direction and we want to invest in the council to make this place really cool.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Dave.
Thanks, Graham. You just mentioned your competition versus school hire costs of, I think you're talking about, you used the figure $40 an hour. You're aware that the Hamilton Boys High charges about $104 an hour, Fraser High about $140, the new one, the Peak, between $140 and $270 an hour.
Depends who you're talking to, Dave, and which time of the day you're actually
I
hiring out.
times of the day for those.
Yeah, your peak times of 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock, and you can get somewhat towards a market rate. When you're trying to fill your organisation during the quiet times, which is the other 10 hours of the day, it's a lot of it just basically giving it away.
Giving it away at $140 an hour for the peak, off-peak time.
Yeah.
That's going to be the comparable one with the university proposal in terms of size.
If everyone would stick to one fee and you could guarantee that it was a market-driven that covered your costs, that would be a great even ballpark to play on, but it's not. And look, all day long it can say, yeah, we can get $140 an hour, but tomorrow they'll do it for 30 because they've got to fill a hole. It makes it very hard to run a business that has to sustain 110 staff and a wage bill of $140,000 a month that we do.
Councillor Mark.
Thanks, Graham.
It's unusual for to call me that.
I've got your real name. The why, am I right, was interested in the indoor recreation facility in the first place?
Yep.
Yeah.
We suggested initially when you looked at Wintec there were some options there, and we had some involvement in that and did some groundwork, worked with America, YMCA and some consultants around the world about facility building and keeping them sustainable, cheap and sensible without putting too much effort into bricks and mortar and making the inside really good.
Right, so are you confident that you could run a facility like that at break even without funding from organisations, governments?
Well, I'd want to hope so, or I wouldn't be a very good manager.
Okay.
Look, dead set, it's a business. It's got a lot of community things in it, but you've still got to run a business. Only hung in War Memorial Pools in Auckland, we run for the council with no financial break even. A little bit of maintenance stuff that we agree on, but the day-to-day operational cost break even.
Okay.
Very compact, tight pools running a good thing.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, Graham. Thank you very much for what you do for the city. It's just fantastic what you've done there.
We try hard.
So,
if that's the right terminology. But hey, thanks for your time. And the cool thing from us as a YMCA, we believe in what the council are doing, rightly or wrongly, of where it's taking things. You're our elected members, and we've got to be part of that and ensure that Hamilton is a successful city without all the posturing and the peripheral stuff around it. Things can go very well, and you've got and I believe some really good employees. So from us as the YMCA, thank you for letting us buy it back 6 years ago, because we think we're trying to make a difference in what's going on in Hamilton.
Lovely. Thank you. Katie King.
Good morning. Nice to see some familiar faces around the table. For those who I already know, hi, and those I don't, it's nice to meet you. My name's Katie King, no relation at all to Mayor King. I'm here today as my position as chair of the North East Community Hub. We're a small charitable trust operating east of Hamilton, just trying to foster better community relations and facilities for the North East. We operate at a number of different levels, but we try to encourage grassroots type community facilities and initiatives. For example, we installed the Flagstaff Book Exchange in Flagstaff Park, something that was funded by volunteers from the community hub. We also try to act as advocates for residents of the North East and act as a go-between between the residents of our area and other bodies and parties within Hamilton, and that includes you guys here at the council, and that's my role here today, is to represent people of the North East and come and bring some of their wishes to the table. We are, as a community trust, heavily in favour of the plan to build a Rototuna library and community hub in the new Rototuna town centre, listed as one of the 9 key projects in that section of the consultation document. We believe as a trust we have a mandate to speak on behalf of the community of the North East. We're doing more and more over time to gauge feedback from the community so that we are speaking on their behalf. Just as an example, in a 4-hour period we got a petition, 67 signatures supporting the project for the Rototuna Community Centre and Library. We also go out to our community with what we call bright idea cards, asking people for anything that they would like to see happen in the northeast of Hamilton so that we can feed those ideas back to council or whoever the relevant people are. Out of 105 initial respondents, 28 specific requests were for a swimming pool in the northeast, 22 for a community centre and 26 for a library. So there's quite a high proportion have put those as their priority projects for the northeast. I've also, given that there was some issues with interpretation of question 8 in the consultation document about supporting projects or not supporting projects and does a no mean a yes and all that sort of stuff, I put a petition out, just a little poll on Facebook to the residents of Flagstaff Group, which is a group of 6,000 members in the northeast. The response back to the poll was, the question was, do you support the Rototuna Library Community Hub or do you oppose it? 12-1 in favour of that facility being generated in Rototuna. So we are confident coming to you guys today and saying this is what the population of the North East want, and we do acknowledge that you won't get an unanimous support for the project. There will obviously be people all across Hamilton who will say Rototuna doesn't need that. People who don't want their rates money being spent in Rototuna. And that's fair enough. People want to see their rates going on projects that will support them personally. But let's face it, this is what residents of the North East have been dealing with for years. For at least the last decade, residents of the North East have been pooling our rates money into Hamilton, and we're seeing it all flow into projects south of Wairiri Drive. It's now time, we've been very, very patient, but it's time now to see some investment back into our community. Just as an example, I didn't put this up on a PowerPoint or anything. If you were to look at a map of Hamilton with the libraries, we've got the 6 libraries across town. There's a huge gap in the northeast. It's a no-brainer. The northeast is missing out on a library facility and it's absolutely needed. We've waited a really long time. I'm so pleased that this is now on the cards, but please don't let detractors put you off from this project. It's much needed. Also, if you do a quick Google Maps search for community houses or community halls in Hamilton, you'll see a whole big swathe of red dots. Nothing in the north apart from Puketi Community House, which is the west of the river. So the northeast, we don't have anything. And we've been pooling our money into the city rates for a long time. It's time to see some investment back. All we're not asking for more than other people in other communities have in Hamilton. We're just asking to be lifted to the same level playing field as everybody else. And there will be those who will come and say, Rototuna doesn't need that. But the 12-1 in favour suggests that Rototuna residents do think we do need that. So I just urge you, please keep that project in the list of 9, prioritise it. It's critical to our community for our growth and development. We don't have indoor spaces. We don't have somewhere that clubs and trusts such as ours, we meet in somebody's lounge because we don't have rooms we can rent. And it's not just us. We'd like to advocate for other groups. We know that there are groups who want to run parenting classes or teach kids how to write code. Great. We see ourselves in the community hub as being the people that the community can come to and say, how do we go about setting this up? What do we need to do? where can we do it? And we can answer some of those questions, but the where is the problem that we have. There is nowhere that we can rent rooms for clubs and organisations. Wouldn't it be great if we could have a room where a JP could have a weekly drop-in session instead of having to go and do it in the public in Chartwell? And these community spaces have such great potential for community use. And going forwards, I'd love to see us at the North East Community Hub working with council to manage that space, to coordinate activities there, and really bring the community together into an actual physical location. So I urge you all, please keep the project on the cards for the North East. Thanks for your time. Any questions?
So just want to point out that our General Manager who looks after libraries and community centres is here and he was listening very intently.
Cool,
So
good. Please give us one in the North East.
So, as to what you would like in that new centre, if we get it across the line. So,
yep.
Councillor Angela.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks for your fantastic submission. Have you visited Te Awamutu Library / Community Hub or the Rotorua one?
I haven't visited. I've seen the online stuff about the Te Awamutu space. It's had really good feedback and reviews as that sort of collaborative space, not just for a library. And libraries nowadays are not just books. They are spaces for
That's right.
Education and information and bringing people together for a variety of reasons. And that's a natural evolution of libraries into more of a community facility, just a book place.
But as a representative of the North East, when it does come, if it does come, when it does come time for this proposal to go forward, you will have done some research and collected some, I love that idea you said of the, what was it, the little note cards?
Bright idea cards.
Bright idea cards. So you'll be able to feed into that process. Because I haven't been to the Rotorua one, but the Te Awamutu one is fantastic, but it's just one room. So
we'd love to be involved when it's, when you guys get it across the line and it's a done deal. We would love to be involved in sort of what that space will look like and the usability of rooms and all that sort of stuff. Please come and get us involved because we'd love to work with you. We've worked with you really well on some existing projects and we'd love to carry on. Thank you.
Okay, we're nearly out of time. We have two more people who want a question, so there's one question each, please. So one question from you, Paula.
Thank you. Hello, Katie. Bright idea cards, the one that went out, they came back. The number one was swimming pool, then the second community library? Or
number one was a swimming facility, and although we know that that's not part of the 10-year plan as such as a definite thing, we definitely support the idea of investigating ways to make that happen. And with the gentleman from YMCA, my eyes lit up when he said he'd love to invest in water facilities. That would be perfect. So yeah, the number one thing that people wanted was a swimming pool, and very closely followed by library and community centre.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Councillor Dove.
Thanks. Have you been familiar or visited the Hallswell Community Centre facility in Christchurch?
No.
If you haven't, would you at least do it online and have a look at the integrated swimming, library and community facilities and council service centre, by the way, all in one?
Yeah, that's a model that we'd certainly look at implementing here.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you very much for what you do for the community. We do appreciate it. Without the volunteer work that goes into our Western world and our Western societies, I believe that's what makes the difference.
I think my philosophy is a lot of people say they should do something, and I want to be one of the ones who says, no, we will, and actually be involved. So.
Well, on behalf of the city, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Ellen, Hospitality New Zealand.
Morning there, councillors.
Morning.
Thank you very much for the opportunity of coming to speak to you about my submission. I've had circulated a copy of a summary of my earlier submission. There's a couple of topics I wish to talk about. Firstly, in regard to Hamilton Gardens, we do not support the $10 entry fee to non-residents. We think this will have serious impact on businesses and residents who rely on the business that is generated from tourists who visit the city. The council report from Haworth HTL dated 27 September indicated a drop of 200,000 visitors per year in the first year and never to return to those levels until beyond 2023, which is when their estimates ceased. The first year alone will see overnight visitors reduced by 53,000, international visitors that is, and international day trip visitors to reduce by 100,000. Given that international tourists to New Zealand spend on average $180 a day, there's the potential loss to Hamilton of $27 million. That same report also indicated a reduction in the number of Hamilton Gardens cafe customers of between 50 and 60%. That could cripple that business. It's a very successful business, very well run, very popular. But to have their turnover cut in half puts that business in serious jeopardy along with the jobs that are there. So we're concerned that if council proceed with this $10 charge, there may be some gains to council in that regard, but there's going to be a detrimental impact to the wider community, particularly the businesses that rely on these visitors. Wanted to raise another issue that is not directly in the 10-year plan, but I believe should be. It's in regard to the explosion of short-term accommodation providers operating in a commercial sense. We're concerned that these boutique accommodation businesses are running under the guise of a private residence when they are in fact a business. There are 450 such private residences operating as businesses throughout Hamilton, and they're being marketed by Airbnb, Book a Batch, and a number of others as well. Hamilton has a differential rating system where you charge commercial businesses a higher rate, and that's fine, but that's not being charged to these businesses because they're not being recognised as businesses. We recognise that there is a need for such businesses as these private residences masquerading as businesses because they do provide a service. But if they're going to be allowed to operate, they should be treated as a business, and that's all we ask. Treat them as the business that they are. Currently, a typical residential property over in Bears Court, I have a rates bill here with me. Their rates bill is about $3.5 grand. That'll go to $9 grand if they're considered commercial. I know the resident there, he is a local resident, he doesn't rent his house out, but if he chose to, that's the saving that he would make over his commercial customers who do incur commercial. So we'd like you to consider determining which businesses are considered commercial entities and whether they comply with the council policies in regard to operating in a residential environment. Council in Hamilton doesn't currently have a policy in place. Other councils do. Queenstown has recently introduced a policy. Rotorua has a long-standing policy which they've just reviewed and renewed. Auckland is looking to impose a policy with their long-term plan as well. It is a big problem. It may not be as big in Hamilton as it is in other sectors, but there's $4 million a year conservatively estimated to go through Hamilton City on properties marketed via Airbnb, etc. The top property is achieving $90,000 in a year. The average of the top 10 properties, this is data that we've actually purchased and it's available for purchase by anybody. The average of the top 10 properties is $56,000 per property. And this is only the properties that are advertised on Airbnb and doesn't include properties that only advertise on Book a Batch, for instance. Many owners advertise on both forums. It makes commercial sense, so it doesn't pick up those that don't. The vast majority of these businesses are not being treated as businesses. They incur residential rates and none of the usual business charges incurred by traditional accommodation providers such as hotels and motels. They operate at a very distinct advantage. A number of hosts operate multiple properties. Of the 450 Airbnb listings, 247, or more than half of those properties, are operated by 53 hosts. So on average, each of those hosts controls 4.7 properties. I pulled a couple off the net. yesterday in preparation for today. Here's one person, her name's Violet. She's got a house over by Hamilton Gardens. She's got 2 other properties as well. Grant, he's got a house here in Hamilton which he rents out, and 2 in Rotorua. Christina, she's got a property in Hamilton, 1 in Ohakuni, 1 in Auckland. Sana, 7 properties in Hamilton. And John and Viriana, they've got 22 properties listed throughout Hamilton and Cambridge. 22. This is serious business that these people are putting through on residential properties. It's time they were treated as commercial businesses that they are. I'm very happy to work with Council to put in place a policy and a compliance system that we can firstly identify which properties are involved and then put in place some control measures. We've already been in contact with a New Zealand firm called The Instillery, theinstillery.com if you care to look it up. They have indicated that certainly they can provide a portal for council staff that will easily enable them to view and download a schedule of data relating to properties marketed online in Hamilton City. They could do that for a very, very reasonable fee. So it can be done. I just simply ask that the council consider this wisely and put in place some measures to treat businesses as businesses where they are businesses. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Alan. We're nearly out of time, so just one question, please, Mark.
Okay. Do you have figures on hotel occupancy in Hamilton, as in the percentage of beds that are used at night? The reason I guess I'm asking that is, do you think that Airbnb and the likes are affecting occupancy, or are they just meeting a need because the hotels are full?
Largely they are meeting a need. The economy is pretty strong right now. The market is good. People are spending money. People are going on holiday. People are visiting areas such as this. When the times dip, there will be a bigger impact that the businesses will notice. Currently, motels that are being affected are those that concentrate on family rooms rather than just doubles and twins. Hotels are not largely being affected because mostly they're doubles and twins. It's the family-style properties that are being impacted by this.
Thank you. Thank you. Ryan, one question.
Just thanks for bringing that to our attention, Alan. Do you think that's more of a central government issue, given what they've just done with GST, for example, on imported goods?
Yeah, good question. I met a few weeks ago with Fletcher Tabuto in Rotorua. Didn't get a lot of traction, to be honest. We're not giving up on that one, but the indications are that this is a local government issue.
Gary, one question, please.
What are the things that would trigger a Airbnb to go from not a business to a business?
Okay. Yeah. The criterion that Queenstown have in place and Auckland are looking to also put in place is up to 28 days per year, not a problem, go for it, straight residential. 28 to 90 days, semi-commercial. Beyond 90 days, require resource consent. And beyond 130 days, it's fully commercial rates and every other cost associated with it as well. So they already have a very strict regime in place, and it's working well. There are some disagreements that they're arriving at with the owners of the property saying, well, I was actually in residence there. And that is a difficult issue that does need to be addressed through consultation with the business owner. But when you've got people like these that operate 22 properties, they can't sleep in 22 properties all at once. You're certainly going to capture them and those others with multiple properties.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Just one thing before you go. What councils are doing this in New Zealand?
Okay, I've personally spoken...
Who has it in place?
In place is Queenstown and Rotorua. It's in Auckland's long-term plan, and early indications that I've received, speaking around my patch, I cover Bay of Plenty, Waikato, is There is similar sympathy in Taupō, in Ruapehu, in Thames Coromandel and in Tauranga.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Alan, for your presentation. Okay, Mark Goodman.
I'm speaking as an individual, I'm not representing anyone except myself.
Okay, so Alan, it's 4 minutes, including questions.
Okay. I've had a concern for quite some time about the state of the city's finances and the repeated statements from council that the city can cope with only modest rate increases. It's no surprise that according to the Hamilton Press, this came up to my letterbox yesterday, Richard Briggs is quoted in saying in 2016, the finances appear to be in good shape. But in 2018, we're living well beyond our means. If the CEO is confused and the councillors can't get good data or accurate data, how can a humble ratepayer be expected to form an opinion based on facts? The consultation questionnaire I filled out sought opinion on several large ticket items, including a regional theatre. While we are staggering from the commitment to the V8s, Clawlands Event Centre and the stadium, it seems profligate at the very least to consider a $50 million plus regional theatre. I oppose the theatre concept until debt is reduced, as we have several local options that will meet our needs for some time to come. We cannot, and probably never will, compete effectively with Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch for top international events. Let's do what we can and do it well. So saying, I wish to address some issues about something we are doing well, the Hamilton Gardens. The gardens are becoming an iconic feature to the Hamilton visitor industry, while becoming more and more a family-friendly meeting place for Hamiltonians and residents of surrounding areas. I am dismayed that the rhododendron lawn is slated to be turned into a parking area, and the parking area at Gate 1 is to be closed. There are underused paved parking areas at Gate 2, and the old netball courts, which also could be used, are at present a storage for mulch. While there are viable, easy-to-upgrade alternatives, why sacrifice an area that is used by so many groups and has a very pleasant central location? A related comment would be that if charging entry is approved, the projected drop in visitor numbers would render extra parking redundant. I oppose in principle charging for entry. In looking at the parking problems and the city's stated aim to showcase the Caddo River, I would like to suggest that consideration be given to linking the council reserve adjacent to the Glenview Club with the gardens. The views both up and down the river at this point are stunning. They're magnificent. The distance to cover is comparatively small. The reserve virtually unused cricket ground has much to recommend it. The Perry Bridge at Horatua is a good example of the use of a modern arch, and a similar structure could be employed cost effectively at the gardens. As the city grows with expansion to the south, it is inevitable that foot and cycle bridges are going to become more important. The advantage of building a bridge at the gardens is that there is widespread public affection for the gardens. The cost, I'm sure, will be largely underwritten by public donation. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Mark, one question, please. We're nearly out of time.
Yep. Thank you for a really positive submission. Would you entertain the idea of it being a toll bridge that people would put a donation in as they went across the bridge, perhaps, or how would you?
I think that the gardens really work well with donations. So I'd say a donation box at each end of the bridge, fine. I don't think the minute you start charging even a $2 coin, you begin to put people off. And so many visitors to the city come and visit family and friends or people I've heard about, and we take them to the gardens. As residents, we just take them there. So we don't want to be paying to get in or paying for too many facilities. Cup of coffee, a scone, okay, but everything else should be donations. And people want to give.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
Councillor Gary, just one question, please. Time's
Okay.
come and gone.
Thank you very much. Do you consider that if people are unwilling to pay $10 to go into the gardens, does that suggest it's not worth $10?
What I'm suggesting is that the ratepayers and lots of voluntary groups over the years have put a lot of effort into the gardens.
No doubt
The
about that. yes.
$10 really doesn't generate much income, and it has got an off-putting effect on feeling free to just use the facilities there. I think it's worth more than $10, but I don't think it should be paid for. I think the ratepayers can do that. Well, we're doing it anyway through our targeted rates.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you.
Dale? Thank you, David. You have 4 minutes. Just start when you're ready, including questions.
My name is David Hill, and I'm speaking on behalf of my wife and myself regarding the proposed options for the city rate increases. We've come to put a voice to our submission because we, like many other people in Hamilton, find ourselves living on a fixed income with no opportunity to increase our income to cover such incredibly high increases that you propose to apply to us. We have lived in Hamilton for many years, and 12 months ago we purchased a retirement home in Hamilton. We've worked hard, we've saved for our retirement, and we seem to be penalised for doing this. We object to the City Council adopting option 6. Our reasoning in coming to this conclusion is that as everyone living in the city will participate in and enjoy the benefits of the city, each household should shoulder a similar responsibility in providing the necessary improvement to services, infrastructure and facilities that are provided by Council. You have consistently talked about a 9.5% increase, and up on the screen is what the information that you supplied to us. They're based on current valuations and don't arrange for anything, the new valuations to be completed later this year and what that will cause. We researched the things, and this is what we found, because we thought people's summer houses would have civil increases. Some of those houses are just across the road from us. And what we want to say is, where's the fairness and equitability in this? We also went to talk to other folks that we have, and we saw people living in different areas in Hamilton faced with this, and where is the fairness and equitability in this? Surely we are all using the same services provided by the council, services such as libraries, rubbish collection, and you know what you supply. On further research out on your website, we found that all the options that you proposed, the best one and fairest seemed to be option 2, but we propose another which we believe is fairer and more equitable proposition. We propose that you start with where the rates are at present and you apply a fair increase across the board for all premises, and for 2 years. Period of time, you take a good look at the way you're arranging how rates are paid, and you come up with a rate that is fair and equitable to every householder. It appears to us that this 10-year plan has caused a considerable rift between the council and the people of Hamilton. The regional theatre and the development of Peacock appear to be foregone conclusions, and it is pleasing you are open this more widely to hear what the people of Hamilton want and the council can afford. You also have too many large and ongoing projects proposed in this 10-year plan. We also found that the Challenge 4 questionnaire was very confusing. A priority for this should be to mend this rift and get the people of Hamilton behind you in the planning for the future of this city. In conclusion, neither option 6 nor 2 are fair and equitable in the sharing of the costs the city faces amongst its residences. A fairer and more equitable way forward than either option: start at the point the rates are at present, and then apply a fair across-the-board increase and pursue a new and fair, more equitable way to calculate rates rather than a capital value basis. And most importantly, get the people of Hamilton behind you in the projects you want to carry out and the planning for the future of this city.
Thank you. We have one question, Gary.
Thank you, David. You made some suggestions then about how we shuffle the rates round, who gets paid for. First thing, do you consider that the amount of rates that we're trying to collect is reasonable, or are you getting good value for money for those? And I guess that's a hard question because it's across the city, because you're talking about
I know.
a certain amount we have to get,
Yep.
and we're going to get it from him or him or him.
Yeah. I think you provide very good services. We've lived in a number of cities in in New Zealand, and you provide very, very good services. I know it's a difficult situation, but you just can't take capital value. It's not a fair and equitable way of getting the people to pay for what's required for the city.
Lovely. Thank you very much. David, I appreciate your presentation. Doreen.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Doreen, you have 4 minutes, including questions.
Very simple submissions. I had two. I think you'll be quite aware by my submission about the theatre. I totally oppose the theatre in Victoria Street. This location is not a pleasant area at night, and to walk down the street to the car park, underground car park, I don't think is would be a very pleasant situation. I don't understand what the craze is about putting the theatre on the riverbank. It's not a very pretty sight at night. It's not a very pretty sight in a flood. You can go and see the river in many, many places than going out to a theatre. I met with Momentum and got the impression that it was a done deal. They rejected that idea, but I still think it is. However, by the time it's built, I'll be too old to get into it anyway. The other thing is, you have the, if the Founders is not going to be repaired or rebuilt, and I had the suggestion to put an underground car park in it, seeing it needs strengthening, that the Claudelands Event Centre is turned into a more of a theatrical area, and the car parking is there. So I did have another submission on the, I don't know whether that I can speak to that as well.
Yes, go ahead.
That's Waiwhakariri Park. This is an outstanding effort by professionals and volunteers, and I was part of the planting group 10 years ago, and I've driven past it many times since and seen more and how it's grown into such a beautiful, beautiful area. I was fortunate to go to an open day recently, and as you'll see in my submission, they would like to open it to the public. That's the first time that I'd been able to walk through the tracks to the Horseshoe Lake, and it does need funding for the composting toilets and some information boards, etc. And for a day out in connection with the zoo, which is an outstanding asset to the city as well, I think that these people that have put in so much work into this beautiful area, it would be quite a tourist attraction. There are a lot of walkers coming into the Ngaruawahia area and doing walks throughout New Zealand. So, and our forestry, vegetation, planting is a major attraction. So I would encourage Council to support their application for more funding. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your presentation, Doreen.
And I do love Hamilton City. I belong to a walking group and the walks are fantastic.
Lovely. Thank you. Christine Norris. Okay, Christine, just make yourself comfortable. You have 4 minutes starting now.
I'm accustomed to speaking from the front row, but I'll do the PowerPoint. I've been told it's all too complicated now, even after years and years of doing that.
No, Christine, this is the presenters present here, staff are at the front, and whoever's running the
The opportunity to
this is
speak.
the appropriate place for you to be where you are.
Is this your time or my time?
Sorry?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak my mind. I'm very concerned, like some of the other speakers, about your finances. You've got accountants on the council, you've got accountant for a CEO, you've got financial reports that have been produced by and checked by accountants, and there's no agreement on it. There needs to be an inquiry. Either the pre-election report was wrong or the reports you're getting now is wrong. One is a lie. One of them is a lie. You need to find out. It is your responsibility. You've got a big problem. We cannot talk about spending money or doing anything until you know what the state of the play is. Don't be sidetracked onto these big programs, these big monument buildings. That's all fun to talk about. You don't know what your state of play is. So you need an inquiry into where you are at with the finances. You cannot spend your way out of debt. You cannot borrow your way out of debt. This PowerPoint doesn't seem to be working.
Press the button.
This button? Yeah.
Press it on and you use the keyboard.
Then the keyboard. Okay. So you can't. Thank you. Oh, is it not working now? Okay. So you can't borrow your way out of debt, and you can't spend your way out of debt. There's only two ways of improving your financial position, and that is you increase your income or you reduce your expenses. If you are operating ethically and responsibly, you will look at your expenses before you even consider increasing your income through the rates. I don't agree with any rates increases at all over the 3.8% until you've done the inquiry and found out which report is wrong. Right, don't forget Mr McCorver. Keep your spending less than your income. It's very wise philosophy. So you have to stop all your big expenses and start trimming all the big expense, what you want to spend on, and trim your expenses. And the non-vote is not a yes. I firmly reject that. I think it's absolutely outrageous that you would consider that when I ignore that you're taking that as a yes. Absolutely not. It's disgusting. Now, Roundup. I'm going to talk about Roundup. I always talk about Roundup. You need to get up to speed with where the world is with Roundup. There's been a huge debate in the EU recently, just about the Third World War. Now, where are they at now with that? I'm asking that you stop it. What they're doing now is they're putting together a regulation that will end the use of this killer in household gardens, parks and sports facilities. So get a clue. What we don't want to see anymore is this behaviour. The sweet young girl, probably about 16 years old, out there was Roundup. Not even wearing the mask that they recommend, right? You're sending out sweet young things like that to be poisoned before she's had a chance to have children or anything. They're oh, really?
Christine, your time's up. I'll give you 1 minute to wrap up.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, well, I'll just work through. Oh, it doesn't seem to be working. Okay, right. Okay, track and trim your expenses. I'll just okay, doesn't that look beautiful? If you're a bird, this is what you actually see when you drive past. Autumn leaves. I want to talk to you about the autumn leaves. I love the autumn leaves. I love to know it's autumn. They're beautiful. But did you know that they landfill at a cost of over $100,000 a year? The other thing that's on my mind is fluoride. Fluoride in the water. Water fluoridation. You need to get up to speed with that. When we had an educated council, they voted it out. As soon as we had a new council, no idea of the issues around fluoride, they voted it back in. I urge you to get educated about it. Don't ask your dentist for information. Recent visit to a dentist by my daughter. One dentist said there was none in the water. The other dentist had no idea what was in the water and how much was in the water. so you won't get any help from there. You need to get educated. But where do mothers get suitable water for their babies' bottles? And don't tell me to go to they should be going out to the Arboretum or the water here. If you've ever been a mother with a little baby, that is a ridiculous suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for your presentation. We've got Brian Main. Thank you, Brian. Just start when you're ready.
Your Worship.
Could we just move the microphone down there, please, Claire? Thank you.
Your Worship, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's a wee bit disappointing there aren't more of you here. However, I've been haunting most of you throughout the year, so if you're not familiar with me personally, you certainly would have had a barrage of emails, so you've got a fair idea of what you're in for. Thank you also for giving me extra time, because I've made about 10 submissions. And the last thing you want to do is sit here and listen to me burble on about each submission. So let's take the opportunity for you to quiz me about various aspects of these things, the issues I've made. I want to congratulate the creator of that submission document. First of all, it exposes the public to all the issues that council have to face, very technical issues. And as I wrote to Councillor McPherson, who in their right mind would ever want to be a bloody councillor? So you have to rely on the people you've appointed as managers for advice on all this multitude of technical and complicated issues. It's also brilliantly written in such a way as it will solicit what some of you councillors want to hear. In some cases, you have offered the public a number of choices and supported those choices with details, unverified details. And at least a couple of highly recognised accountants I know have told me that they're incorrect. There are errors in them. Now, I'm not an accountant, but I respect what they're saying. The other thing is the odd one there. It says yes or no. For example, this issue of charging to go into the gardens, into the theme gardens. And that's a really complicated issue, which I've spouted on about that in great detail. So the public expect to just say yes or no. And as a gut feeling, and without any background knowledge of all the pros and cons, I suspect the average person will say, yeah, that sounds fair enough, $10. But as you will be well aware, if you've read all the gobbledygook I've sent you, it's a lot more complicated than that, and I've argued vigorously that you're going to lose money by doing that. It's going to cost you more to do it than you'll ever recover. Now, amongst my 10 submissions, two things, there's probably a running theme through that. One is, I think there are alternative ways for the council to generate money and reduce the expenditure. And in addition, because of our size and position around the nation, we're in a unique position to be a leader, certainly a New Zealand leader, and in some cases a world leader on how we approach our problems. We've already demonstrated that by what's happened in the past with other councils and enlightened mayors in forming this unique relationship that we have with the citizens, that you have with the citizens of Hamilton. Hundreds of millions of dollars have gone into those gardens, and they've come from ratepayers, they've come from sponsors, they've come from agreements between cities, sister cities and embassies and all manner of things, most of which have been orchestrated by the Friends of the Gardens. Nowhere in the world does that exist. In fact, the gardens themselves are unique. Nowhere in the world will you find not only a botanical garden, but an area which celebrates the history of gardens and the contribution that they've made to civilisation. And of course, that's been created by the genius of Peter Sergel, the director. So I invite you to have a go at me. I don't know if you got a list. I gave the officer a list of all the submissions that I've made. If you haven't got them, then we could perhaps start. I can read out the heading of the first one and work my way down, whatever suits you. Beg your pardon?
Time to speak to us, so.
Well, I'll say I've been given 10 minutes, which I'm very grateful for because of all this. So, do you want me to talk to you? Okay. All right. Well, the first thing that I got up my nose was first of all, the proposition of charging $25 to get into the gardens. I came here and spoke to you about that. And during the course of your day, you got it down to $10. The cynic might argue that your worship thought, I'll play this cunningly, I'll put it up to 25 and we'll work our way down and everyone will think they've won something. No one had done a cost-benefit analysis. And I'm a member, I don't represent the Friends of the Gardens, but I am a member of the Friends of the Gardens. And we've got about 700 members, and you've got about 700 opinions on every bloody thing, as you can imagine. So, but I know a lot about organisation. I've got a history as a soldier and as an academic, so I know a fair bit about how things work. We've got away with a hell of a lot because we are not a enterprise. As soon as you start charging to go in those gardens, the first thing you've got to ask yourself, well, how are you going to get the money? At the moment, the information centre is staffed by friends. A lot of them in the 80s, some in their 90s. Now, you're not seriously thinking that these people are going to have to say to someone, well, are you a ratepayer? And if you are, show me the evidence. And then take the $10. And if we only have 1,000 visitors a day, it's $10,000 that us doddery old bastards got to look after. Now, every day we hear every day about people raiding dairies and what have you, armed people to get cigarettes and money. Well, what a perfect target we would be. You know, just walk up and grab the damn money and head off.
Excuse me, Brian.
Yes.
You have 1 minute left. We have two people who want to ask questions. You can talk for that minute, or you could take a question from each one of them.
You've given me the 10, have you?
Yes, it's gone.
Oh.
Yes. So it's your
Time goes quickly when you have
it's your choice. Would you write the questions, or would you like to finish talking for the last minute?
I would sooner have the questions.
Okay. So this there isn't time for a lot. So one question from Councillor Angela and one question from Gary.
Oh, sorry. Brian, in question 8, you have not supported the Hamilton Gardens development. Is that correct?
No, no.
So you do, well, I thought that. You do support Hamilton Gardens development.
I do, yeah.
In question 8, you've selected, there was some confusion around this question, so you have selected to not support that. But of course you do, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Okay. And just, you've also selected no for Garden Place.
Yes, absolutely.
But that one's right?
Yeah.
Okay, so one's right, one's wrong. Thank you, Brian.
Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Brian. On question 5, you've talked about Hamilton's expanded into other areas and people are using our services and things like that. We should expand our boundaries and just start changing rates. How do you square that off with not wanting them to charge to go to the gardens? Because that's, I assume, just one of the other facilities that they're not paying for that they could pay for.
Well, first of all, of the 700 friends, a very large percentage live across the road from Hamilton boundary, you know. So they're scattered around. This city has grown, and as it's grown, about 10,000 a year, it's just moved into the rural areas. And the thing is, once you move over the road, you start paying another council. And yet, you go down the same roads, use the same sewage.
But I guess, Brian, just to be very, very focused, your issue here was that there are people who are living outside our city who are using our services but not paying for them.
Yeah.
Those same people are coming into the Hamilton and using our garden, or your garden, because you've done a lot more for it than I have. And you don't see that as a contradiction?
No, because I don't believe anyone should be paying to go into the gardens. But the thing is, what I really the point I was really trying to make is there must be some mechanism. Every city must have this problem. There must be some mechanism by which you can extend the boundaries so they're included in the city council collection point.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for your presentation.
Okay.
Is Benson here? Thank you. Just so members are aware, we do have Creative Waikato and Momentum who will both be presenting before lunch as well, just if you're trying to plan your time. Thank you, Benson. Go ahead, you have 4 minutes.
I'm a little bit nervous. This is my first time sit like this and speak to those people and who are very important for this city. I'm an immigration, you guys can see it, and I live in Hamilton for 17 years. And I studied university, and then I'm a father of 3 children, and I live in Rototuna, and I see a lot of growth in this city. And because we share different culture, and we got a lot of field experience overseas in China. It's like me. We saw the field, the wrong experience. I don't want Hamilton like that anymore, because I want you guys to think more future, not just see like next 5 years or 10 years. You need to face the challenge, because the city grows faster than all you expected, and it's grow faster and faster. So you need to think about what happens after like 10 years, like 20 years. What are you gonna do for the, like the, you know, the old man said, you know, the guy said, you need to extend the boundary. Sorry for, I call him old man, like, you know, it's like, sorry, it's, yeah. And because I live in Rototuna, I a little bit late, because every time I drive to the city, I got the traffic jam on the Fairfield Bridge, and I heard a lot of ideas that they want to change it because they want to keep the style, keep the way it looks like. But I think, what about you redo it, like get the designer to draw the pictures same styles, but make it wider, and, you know, make it more efficiency, because lots of people suffering the traffic jam over there. And everybody said, okay, yeah, city don't want to change it because they want to keep the way it is. It looks like, you know, there's like a signature of the city, but you know, what they call is like the signature of traffic jam. You know, that's a point. They think this is a point that people think that's a style. So, and they think the style they think is like traffic jam. So there's an excuse for what you think, because you guys all choose by the people, and you gonna represent them by them, not yourself, because you want to keep the way it looks like. You like the style, but all the people are suffering of the traffic jam over there. So you need to think about that, because your children, what about your children's children, gonna suffer in the traffic jam every day over there. And also Hamilton is like got the river across the city, and there's city on the one side and the living area the other side. So every day when the day start, everybody gonna cross the river, and there's not enough bridge, and the bridge is not wide enough. And I know years before, 30 years before, people didn't think that much. They think, we don't have that much people. We don't need that, because we're gonna pay like a double money. You're gonna pay the double of the cost to build a wider bridge at that point, because you didn't think that much. So I think, you know, if you want to do something, do it right. Don't try on the point that I want to do it, but I want to save money. Don't do it. If you think you want to save money and do something, don't do it. If you want to do it properly. Do it right. If you don't have money to do it, get someone can do it, like PPP. I know this is a very good idea for the most of the world.
Okay, you're out of time. Is there anything else you want to quickly touch on in less than a minute?
Yeah, I think we, as a father, we need more facility for the children. We need more activity like community center. It's not just outside. It's because outside children can hurt, can get sunburn, can get a lot of things. We got enough space. Hamilton is an open city. We got a lot of space, outside space. We need more inside space, like swimming pool, like the library, like the event center, like something activity people can teach, can learn. Children can spend their time, and also the holiday, because I know you guys all parents. And what about the school holidays? Where are they gonna go? It's like a painful for the parents who live in Hamilton. You got no place. It's like Auckland, got so many swimming pools, got so many libraries, got so many activity area. They got like snow plant. They got lots of things they can spend. But Hamilton, how many community center, how many event center we can go? There's none. It's like, I don't know any. But if you know any, you can tell us, because the children don't have any place to go. And okay. I think this is very important for the council to think about it. For the community center, for the event center, for the children, they can gathering, can teaching, can learning, can spend their time, and inside, not just outside. You can build a playground easily. Just throw some grass and maybe something like that. But people get hurt. I know some people, they got broken bones. The children got broken bones, got sunburn, got a lot of injuries. And I think the government, they just wanna, to let the people up, we both build a playground for the children. Don't do it if you want to save money. Just don't do it, because if you want to do it right, because people choose you guys to represent them, and you need to think for them, not think for yourself. And also, if you don't have money, just get someone to do it. Maybe charge, maybe get paid, and the council can get the rent of the land, and the people can feed themselves. So we are willing to pay to get the entrance of the indoor area or the indoor activities. We can buy the ticket, we can everything.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. We're out of time, so thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. Yep. Okay, Sarah Nathan of Creative Waikato.
Actually, Calvin can go first.
Sure. Yep. Calvin. So Kelvin, you have 9 minutes. You have 9 minutes starting now.
Thank you, Your Worship and
including
councillors.
any questions.
What was that, sorry?
Including any questions.
Excellent. I'll be very brief, as you know. Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to present to you as CEO of Momentum Waikato. As I am aware of the decisions you have to make and the increasing tension between rates, fees and debts and meeting the expectations of communities and delivering your core service. Likewise, this is what's happening from a central government perspective in meeting the social needs and requirements of a country through taxes. And it is in that gap that government have clearly signalled that business, corporates and philanthropy need to step up and fill those holes. And that's what Momentum Waikato is about. And that's what we're intending to do, particularly with the Waikato Theatre and other projects. We do 4 things in the city. We're looking to build a long-term endowment fund. We're linking generous donors to projects that matter to them. We're doing transformational projects, which the current one is the Waikato Regional Theatre. And we convene and broker across other partners to bring projects and funding together where the outcomes are greater than those envisaged as single projects. One of those projects that we've delivered is the Vital Signs projects, which is an evidence-based that identifies the top 10 issues across the Waikato region and the top 10 issues. And our long-term plan submission to you is based on where the issues you have raised match up with our evidence. So we've taken that approach. So in terms of that, challenge 1 about borrowing to pay for everyday costs, we've gone with option 6, and then on the basis of that is because we believe the need to actually future-proof for future generations around youth being one of our key principles in the Vital Signs, and actually enabling the rates increase now to pay for costs that are true today and not subsidising for future generations. In short, that's the basis of that one. Hamilton's next biggest housing area, Peacocks, again on the basis that supply, the largest supply numbers are in that area for the best cost in relationship with government, and the need to align with government and work on those principles to co-fund. I know a little bit about that. Challenge 3, improving Hamilton's transport system. We've chosen option 1, again, because under the Vital Signs work, the constant connectedness of communities and transport being one of those, and the provision of public and safe services is a key outcome that we have seen. Challenge 4, investing in community infrastructure. We believe that's key to everything we need to do within communities. And again, it relates to just about every single aspect of our 10 well-beings that we've identified, where youth, community activity, iwi voices all talk about community activity and provision. And again, I don't envy your role in making those decisions. We do point out we're supportive of the community hub at Rototuna, but we'd also point out there are other hubs in our areas that would likewise require some form of community centre hub. And for example, we have been talking about a concept where we look at housing as an issue, and we're not talking about housing affordability anymore. We're actually talking about home security. So how do you provide models of housing that provides security of housing for the long term? It may not actually be ownership, it may be a very different model. How do you then bring in the local schools and upgrade those services? How do you do the same with the commercial and the parks and the recreation, and actually look at it on a geographic basis? We're working on that model now, and we'll come to you in the future with that. Obviously, there's the Waikato Regional Theatre, and there's a number of issues that we know. We did present to the Waikato Regional Council on Wednesday morning. We ticked all of their issues with them. They told us that every council had come back to them and was supportive in principle of the basis for the regional fund and the funding program that they put together. How that goes within their own deliberations and voting is yet to be heard, but we had a good hearing. And again, I'll leave some space for you to ask me about specific issues. Finally, on the development contributions policy, as you know, I do know a little bit about it, not a great deal, and certainly would support the rationale behind the policy change you make. There is a plea from us as a charitable organisation doing a rather large project that there is a remission period for projects like the Regional Theatre that are already underway processes and may retain the CBD free remission for that purpose. That is my submission, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mark.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I couldn't get your submission up here, unfortunately, but did you include the Vital Signs research on that? And if can we get a copy of that, please? Because that is excellent stuff that we could use as perhaps a binding document.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew. Hi, Kelvin. Just a question regarding the regional theatre. There's still seems to be a fairly significant groundswell of who like the founders site, who still regard that as a sort of home for the theatre. Are you guys aware of that feeling at Momentum, and how are you trying to address that feeling in the community? I mean, in terms of communications and all that sort of stuff, because you'd acknowledge it's there.
Oh, absolutely. So, in fact, we're even engaging with some of the protagonists in terms of, or promoters of that idea, that the founders is right. But if I take you back to the decisions you've had to make around the initial $30 million estimate, but back in June 2016 was when you went to the community and said, if we're going to spend $30 million, what should we do? And they said, build new. It was at that time that Momentum come forward and said, well, if you're going to build new, let's take a look at how you do that and at what scale, and how do you, again, address that gap between your ability to fund new. And certainly 30 million of the current founders wouldn't get you new, it would get you a safe current facility. So, and again, has been held with location selection around the city. And in terms of Momentum's view about the transformational project, it was about how do we find a location that opens to the river, that connects to the city CBD transformation, which is part of the outcomes that council wants. How do we leverage other projects? So that's the basis of where we're at. In terms of your question about communications, we're doing, and this might make Councillor McPherson laugh, I'm doing a slight charm offensive where we're going out and talking face to face to these people and to these groups, because it is about having that discussion and understanding that if the Central City Regional Theatre doesn't go ahead, and founders where it's at, and there is still a $30 million issue that council has, you still need to do something, because no one's saying we don't want a theatre. They're debating location and issues around parking. We understand that, and we think we've got answers to all those, and we've run a pretty good process to get to that location. And I think you are in a unique position that you have all that data, and we've had workshops. Likewise, I'm in a unique position to understand those details. But I think it is about talking those details through with people, and we have found that when we have walked people through the history, the issues, and the opportunities, and why we're doing what we're doing as Momentum, people generally get it. They may still have an attachment to founders, and we completely understand that, but it is about us and why and how we got to where we got to. And I think that's best done face to face with groups, with the promoters of those projects, and we're working that process through. I think it's ongoing, but yes, that's how we're intending to do it, rather than the widespread, because you never quite get to the level of detail you can when you're talking. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelvin. It was a very long reply to that answer.
Thank you.
That question, sorry. We have one more question, and it's from back to Councillor Mark.
Yeah, look, I will use your time if that's okay. I've been reading a lot of submissions regarding putting the theatre in Claudelands and extending that out. Can you please remind me about what Momentum found out in that process? Or, you know,
yeah, so we did do a piece of work. As a result of the feedback that we'd had, there was the location, the parking, the geotech, the access, the seating were the main ones. And we quite rightly asked the question, well, what about if? And when we went and did the costings around doing it new on a new piece of land, there's a couple of things. One, assuming the land is available to us already, like Founders and Claudelands would be, there is still, as we know, Founders, part of the cost changes in Founders was around geotech issues. But also, the biggest opportunity with the theatre is the cost sharing of the foundation construction costs with the hotel, which reduces your overall foundation cost, which is the biggest part of the construction. Okay. That saves us a further $6 million, which actually brings it down to the point where the location is as cheap, if not less expensive than other locations, regardless of where it is.
Right, okay, thank you.
So it's the cost sharing with the commercial entity. Right. So the cost sharing is basically split 60-40 between the commercial and the theatre in terms of the initial foundation cost savings.
Thank you, Kelvin. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
Sarah Nathan from Creative Waikato. Sarah, you have 9 minutes, including questions.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Good almost lunchtime to you all. Good to see you. Congratulations on getting through half a day of the first day of hearings. Creative Waikato made a submission on 4 points in no particular order. All right, let's cover off the regional theatre first, seeing as we've already had a brief discussion on that. The 4 points on which we specify our support, just to be clear, Creative Waikato fully supports that Hamilton City Council fulfils its commitment in principle to fund the $25 million plus annual asset maintenance contribution of $1 million to the new theatre. 4 key points around that. One around the proven necessity for regional performing arts infrastructure and the current gap that our city is experiencing without a theatre of that scale and capability. The second is around the clear community benefit that we gained from providing such a facility. I won't go through it all. Thirdly is the uniqueness of the momentum model that has been proposed that is able to leverage several advantages in the city, which are social and infrastructural. The fourth one, which is I find particularly interesting, is a very recent piece of research done by Creative New Zealand. Creative Waikato paid to have this piece of research boosted in our area, so we made sure we had incredibly robust figures. This data isn't actually published yet. Creative New Zealand are launching this data later this month, but the headlines are that of Waikato residents surveyed, the majority of residents are engaged with the arts. 78% of our population engaged with the arts. 71% believe that arts are a national source of pride. 62% believe that arts offer a chance to learn about different cultures. 55 believe that the arts contribute to our economy. 81 believe that the arts are either fairly, very or extremely important to our region's identity. And the facts go on, but that's a really nice piece of data there if you're interested in reading it. The second point on which we made a submission is the library network's expansion. Creative Waikato fully supports option 2 for a $3.7 million budget to expand and improve the Hamilton Libraries network, specifically Hillcrest, Chartwell and Central Library. And the reason for that is that same piece of research. We inserted a unique question for our region because we thought it was important with all of the development in creative infrastructure and support at the moment. And we asked simply, when you think of what is important to make the Waikato a great place to live in the context of the creative arts, what is most important? And the number one response was libraries, with 65% of people saying that it makes it a great place to live. So that is the simple reason for our support of option 2. The third submission is around community funding and the need for more community funding. We're going backwards. Our number hasn't dropped in terms of what has been in the contestable community funds, but population has dramatically grown and inflation has been applied, which leaves us in a sad position of our equivalent of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 equivalent cities around New Zealand. We're the second poorest in returning community funding for community projects. Creative Waikato, on Hamilton City Council, we administer the Creative Community Scheme. Every time we do that, we have to decline. This time we had to decline, what's my maths, over $100,000 worth of excellent applications. So that's a significant amount of activity that is not going to happen because we simply can't afford to fund it. I know that the Mayor had one of those applicants who were declined in his office on Monday, so you'll know what I'm talking about. So we request that the that community grant is reviewed, brought up to speed with inflation and population growth. We also propose that a portion of that fund is ring-fenced for art and creativity, so we can manage that fund strategically. The third and last, it's a bit of new news for you. You've heard all those ones before. We propose, Creative Waikato has been working on a regional arts strategy, but rather than calling it a strategy, we're calling it the Waikato Arts Navigator, because strategies have a tendency to fall into filing cabinets and never be seen again. And unfortunately, that has been a little bit of the fate of the Hamilton Arts Agenda. The Hamilton Arts Agenda is a few years, well, it's a number of years old now, but hasn't been reviewed for 2, and it's vastly out of date. We think it's a great document, but it's vastly out of date. When we're trying to garner national investment in our region, we need to be more coordinated around our creative aspirations and our creative investment in our region. The Waikato Arts Navigator is a very simple framework which would support the Hamilton Arts Agenda to be a more live and living document. you've got a copy of it. It's based on four very simple principles, four simple platforms of creative prosperity, creative experiences, creative wellbeing and creative excellence. We're presenting this to all councils in our region. We've already had extremely good interest. Most of the smaller councils don't have the luxury of being able to invest in art strategies, and we see this as a very simple tool in which to allow them to start building art strategies, and this framework would simply allow all of the regions to line up so we can more equally identify the progress that we're making. That is my submission, and I would be delighted to answer any questions.
How do we get
Hi.
how do we get Creative New Zealand to return back to the Waikato, our share compared with other metropolitan cities and other areas per head of population?
We're making really good progress in that. There's been a sizable increase in investment from Creative New Zealand over the last 5 years, but we want to accelerate that. And actually, that's how we do it. We use a regional navigator because they don't just look at Hamilton City Council, they look at us as a region. And we need to demonstrate, and so, sorry I had to really race over that because we're short of time, but really the essence of this is to say what are we already doing really well on a regional basis, how do we document and record that, how do we coordinate that into one picture, and then how do we just start building from strengths. So I think this is actually one of the most powerful tools we can use to do that.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi.
Just to follow on from that one, if I might, then. Creative New Zealand, are they likely to be more, I don't want it to sound a leading question, putting a new Waikato Regional Theatre in, will it make a difference, having that high-class facility, would it make a difference to our ability to attract funding from Creative New Zealand? Simple
Answer is yes. We've been sitting with Creative New Zealand 3 times on this specific issue, getting their feedback and input. They're really impressed with the way that the consultation and the design plans have progressed. They are particularly interested in the operating model. They invest in activity in that building, and they've never done that before with our other facilities. So, for example, if you look at other theatres in the country, they'll sorry, I'm grasping at numbers, but anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million a year can be spent on investing in developing creative product for the region, and they're particularly interested in investing in seeing local stories being told.
So that,
and they have said that. They said, we will invest.
So that higher proportion of community use and engagement of that facility, something that would attract their interest.
Yeah. And community use, it's a funny word. So you've got community use of facilities such as, you'll have large ethnic celebrations, kapahaka. So yes, they are very interested in that. They're also very interested in new, high quality, curated new works that represent the Waikato story and the Hamilton story that can be presented to our audience and national and international audiences. They want to see new work developed out of this facility, and they want to support that to happen. They won't give us a dime for a brick. They'll give us good cash for what happens within the building.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for what you do for the Waikato through the work you do. So we do appreciate that.
Thank you, Mary Andrew. It is our pleasure. We love this place.
Okay, we'll gather back, and our next present after lunch is at 1:45. So thank you all.